We will start by marking 1.5 inches from the down line up until the top. That 1.5 inches mark we are taking is actually for the folding allowance. That would be what will be folded inwards. So everything that will be folded inside is the 1.5 inches mark you see me taking. And after that, I'll use the ruler to join all the 1.5 inches mark I took to form a straight line. And that line will actually be our folding line. So after taking the 1.5 inches mark, I will also take the 1 inch mark from the 1.5 inches line point. And the 1 inch mark you see me taking is actually the line that will contain the buttonhole, because the center of that line is actually the line that will contain the buttons on the right side and the buttonholes on the left side for a male shirt. We're actually working on a male shirt. If it were to be a female shirt, it would be the opposite of that. So you see me taking the center point now, and after taking the center point of the 1 inch line, I would use the ruler to make a broken line to signify the center of that line. And that center is very important, because when we are taking our measurements, we'll take the measurement from that buttonhole line. The buttonhole line is actually the center of the shirt, be it the front or the back. The buttonhole line is the center. So if you understand that, the cutting of a shirt will be very easy for you. Next is the back, and I'll take the back measurement from the buttonhole line. From the buttonhole line, I'll mark the back measurement, which is 9 inches. Then I'll go down by 2 inches, and that will give us our slants. But before then, I'll also take the neck curve. So I'll mark 2 1/4, then I'll go down by 4 inches, and that will create a curve that will be a starting point for the neck of our shirt. The neck is actually bigger than that, but we'll start with that. Then I'll join my slants to the edge of the curve, and I would also mark out the neck curve we are starting with. And after that, I'll go straight to the marking of the chest. The chest is 10 inches from the top, and I'll mark on 3 different positions. And after marking, I'll make use of my ruler to join a straight line, and that would actually be the chest line. So after that, I'll make another parallel line to that chest line, which will be our tummy line. That is also from the shoulder down to the 17 or 17.5 inches mark, depending on your shoulder to tummy measurement. And also after that, I'll take the shirt length. The shirt length is actually 29 or 30 inches, depending on yours, but for this we're marking out 30 inches. But most shirts for adults are mostly between the range of 29, 30, 31 inches or 30.5 inches. So if you want to do yours, probably take your measurement and be sure. So I'll go straight to the taking of the perpendicular measurement of the shoulder, transfer it to the chest. Then I will make use of my ruler to join that shoulder point to the chest point, and that would actually be a measurement of 8 inches, and half of it will be 10 inches. Then on that half point, I'll come forward by 1 1/4. Then I'll make use of a curve to pass through that point from the shoulder up until the chest, and that would actually be our armhole curve for the front piece. Then I'll take my chest measurement from the buttonhole line, which is 10 inches, Then I'll add my sewing allowance. If I don't add sewing allowance in the beginning, I'll add at the end. So I'm not actually adding sewing allowance. So I'll be dividing all my measurement by 4. That's the chest measurement, the tummy, and the hip. Then I'll be joining the chest to the tummy and also the tummy to the hip. And after that, I'll be adding my sewing allowance. And the sewing allowance is ½ inch. So you just add ½ inch to the side of the shirt like that. And after marking all the ½ inch points, you will use your marker to also draw out the line to show the addition of the excess for your sewing allowance. So if you want your sewing allowance to be 1 inch, you can make yours 1 inch or even more. So after that, I'll work on the down line. The down line is not actually straight, so I took 2 inches upwards, and from the buttonhole line I'll make a curve to meet that point. Then for our folding allowance, I will mark ½ inch on the edge because ½ inch will be bended first before bending the remaining 1 inch. It is on the edge of that ½ inch that the sewing will actually be on. Then I'll mark out the part I'll be cutting off and also fold on the folded line. After cutting out the pattern paper for the front piece, we'll use it to cut out just one part of the fabric, and that will be the part that will contain the button. Then we sew on the edge. After sewing on the edge, you could see what we got. So this is the wrong face, and I'll be using the chalk to mark it out. So that's the wrong face. So I'll turn it over to the right face, and that will be exactly where I'll be placing my buttons on that part I just finished stitching. So I'll be placing my buttons on that part. So for the part that will contain the buttonhole, it is a total different way in terms of the making process. I actually cut it out, not giving the exact size and measurements, just because I want to be sure the lines are in alignment. So I just made a straight cut, and after doing that I will chalk out the wrong face. So you could see the difference. This is actually bigger than the other side, and this is because I want the lines to be in alignment. I actually cut it out to be way bigger than this, so I reduced it to what you just see on the screen now, because I'm just trying to be careful to make sure the lines are in alignment, because when doing this kind of shirt, the most important result is to make sure your lines are in alignment. So that's the first thing you have to take note of when you are making your shirt, that shirt of these kinds of design, these check designs. So I also cut out 2 inches, then I also bent the 2 inches by ½ inch on the edge. And mind you, what I cut out is also in alignment with the part I'm actually making. So the buttonhole part is actually different from that of the button. So the part that will contain the buttonhole will have these 2 inches cut out attached to it, and by attaching it to it, you still make sure everything is in alignment. So you just check like that, and after checking, you will join both by ½ inch stitch from the top to the down line like that. We've joined the cutout to the borders. You could see the sewing line, and we also followed the line. You could see the lines are in alignment. Next thing to do will be to turn it to the other side. After turning it to the other side, we'll make use of our pressing iron to make sure the sewing line is flattened. So it's no longer standing facing up. You make sure it is flattened. So after making sure it is flattened, you bend the folding. Use your tape rule to check, making sure it is not more than 1/4 inches. Since the other side containing the button is 1 inch, this part containing the buttonhole should be at least 1/4 inch. So 1/4 inches in the sense that it should be a little bit bigger than the part containing the button. That is, it is 1/4 inch bigger than the part containing the button. So as you can see, when we are folding, we are making sure of two things. One is to make sure it is not more than 1/4 inches. Then the next thing is to make sure the lines are in alignment. So those two things you must take into cognizance while working, making sure it is not bigger than 1/4 inches, and also making sure the lines of the cutout in alignment. After bending, we'll stitch 1/4 inch before the edge and also 1/4 inch before the edge of the other side, making it two separate stitches on the 1/4 folding. Then after sewing, it's time to place the right and the left piece side by side. And placing both side by side, one thing will come into play, and that will be the arrangement of the line design. So the white line must flow from the left to the right side. Then you can use pins to hold it down, or for the case of this tutorial, we made use of tiny stitches on different positions to hold it down. So we just stitch on different positions to make sure the left and the right side are together, after which we are going to bend on the buttonhole line and do our cutting. After holding both together with tiny little stitches, mind you, you can use pins if you feel comfortable using pins. I'll trim the down line to make sure both down lines are on the same line, and after that I'll bend at the exact buttonhole position. Then I'll trim the left side of this front piece to be the same shape and size with that of the right side. We are done working with the front piece, so it's time to work on the back piece. So I'll put my pattern paper I'll be using to cut out the back piece underneath the pattern paper of the front piece. I'll place the line of the back piece on the buttonhole line of the front piece. So the starting line of the back piece will be on the buttonhole line of the front piece, and I will use a pin to hold it down on the top and also use a pin to hold it down on the down line. And I'm holding it down just so I can cut the slant of the shoulder. I'm working with 3 pins actually, so I'm just trying to hold it steady to make sure the back piece is on the buttonhole line. The buttonhole line is actually the center broken line in between the two 1 inches line. So that broken line is actually the buttonhole line. Next thing to do will be to cut off the slant of the back piece. Then I'll remove my pins, readjust to a 2.5 inches mark. Usually I readjust to a 2 inches mark, but I'm readjusting by 2.5 inches because I want my measurements to recover itself. Because I remember when I was trying to trim off both front pieces, I had to trim 1/2 inch away from the down line of the right piece. So that 2.5 inches I'm adding will actually be a compensation for the half inch I trim off. So I'll make my curve on the neck and I'll also trim it off. After cutting the neck, I'll take my back measurement, but before then I'll take the armhole measurement, the half of it, then I'll add 3/4 inches. Then I'll take a straight line from the shoulder down to that point like that. Then I'll take my back measurement. After taking my back measurement, which is my normal back measurement plus an additional half inch for sewing allowance, I'll join to the back curve, then I'll cut off. I'll also use the back piece to cut out the back cape. So after cutting out the back cape, I use the back cape pattern paper to also cut out the fabric. Then I'll bend the downline by 3/4 inch. Right now we'll join the back to the front piece and also we'll join both to the cape. So after placing the back piece like that, and that's the wrong face facing us, so we'll place the wrong face of the front piece to face the back piece. We'll place both, making sure they're on the same shoulder to shoulder edge. We are actually joining 3 pieces together, and that is the back piece, the front piece, and the back cape. And we are joining all 3 pieces with 1 stitch. So when I'm joining the back to the front to the cape on the left shoulder, I'm making sure I'm joining all 3 with 1 stitch. And when I'm doing the same on the right, I'm making sure I'm joining all 3 with 1 stitch. So after arranging the front and the back piece to be on the same shoulder line, we would also arrange the back cape to be on the same shoulder line with both arrangements. Then on doing that, we'll make our half-inch stitch from the neck to the armhole position on the right, from the neck to the armhole position on the left. We've actually sewn all 3 pieces together. Now will be to turn it to the other side and use our pressing iron to flatten that sewing line. And after doing so, we'll make a half-inch stitch on the downline of the back cape. After making a stitch on the downline, you could see what we got. I'll use my pressing iron now to flatten that sewing line. Then I'll go straight to the next phase. Before I do any other thing, I'll first of all check all my measurements from the buttonhole line. If need be, I'll actually trim the neck. So I'll be checking my chest, tummy, hip and the rest, and I'll be adjusting. Before we start working on the sleeve, we will take the measurement of the armhole of the bodice. So in doing that, I'll put my tape rule from the shoulder, pass it through the armhole, all through like that. So as you can see, we got 11, which is 22 inches. To cut our sleeve, I'll make everything clear. I'll be as basic as possible. Our sleeve length is 25 inches. So I'll be marking 25 inches on the pattern paper. Then I'll be explaining every addition and subtraction for you. So I promise this will be a very basic process, so you would understand everything I'm doing. So as you can see, I'm marking 25 inches from the initial line I drew. So in between both lines is 25 inches. Let's go straight to the workings. So now I will add half inch to the back, and this will be the part I will be attaching to the body of the shirt. So that half inch you see me marking will be what will be attached to the shirt. So I'll shade it for you to know. So that's like the sewing allowance. So after that, there will also be a wristband. The wristband that will contain the button, and the wristband is 3 inches. So I'll be marking that too for you to see. But that will not be part of the sleeve, that will be cut off. So now for the part that will be inserted into the wristband, I will be adding half inch. So half inch will be inserted into the wristband when you are fixing your sleeve inside your wristband. So that half inch will be inserted. So that's how you get your sleeve. When you are cutting your sleeve, that's how you get what will be cut off and what will be added to your wristband. So it all depends on the size of your wristband. So you could see now everything from one sewing allowance to the other is 23 inches. So that's that. So I'll go straight to the real work of the sleeve, which is actually the armhole curve and also the wrist and the round elbow. So I'll take 9 inches downwards like that. Then I will make a line to join that 9 inches mark. Then I will divide the 9 inches into 2, which is 4.5. Take half inch forward like that. Then I will make my curve to meet this 6 inches mark I'm taking now. So I'll start my curve. I actually took my armor curve to be 22 inches, which is 11. So I'll just check, make that curve to meet that point. On the wrist part, I'll take 6 inches from that line. Now from that point, my curve will meet the wrist part like that. Next is to check with the armhole. Our armhole is 22 inches, so I'll be using 11 inches to check if it can meet the 6 inches mark. Since it cannot, I will just stretch to where it touches the 9 inches mark. So that is the point it touches the 9 inches line. So I'll make my curve from the center point to that point like that. The next thing I'll do will be to take 8 inches from the edge, mark a point, then use my ruler to make a line downwards, and on that line I'll be taking my round elbow measurement. So normally I usually take 16 and a half for this client, but I'll be taking 7 inches. Then I'll also be adding an additional half inch for my sewing allowance, already existing curve that leads to the wrist. I will shade out the important curves and lines, then I'll go straight to the cutting out of the sleeve itself. The cutting process is pretty straightforward. I'll just cut what I shade out from the armhole parts like that, follow that line up until the wrist part. And after I get to the wrist part, I'll go upwards. So you could see I'm adding all my sewing allowance I added, that's the shaded part, are also part of what I'll be cutting out. Then I'll cut off the top part, and that will conclude the cutting part of the wrist. After that, I'll start the preparation of the part that will contain the arrowhead. I'll take 3.5 inches from the top like that. I'll take that mark on 2 different positions. Then I'll use my tape so I get the 4.5 inches mark on that line. After which I will make a line, then make an arrowhead on the edge of that line, and that will be the shape of my notch. So I'll use the pattern paper to cut out the fabric. So I actually folded the material into 2 and actually cut out 2 sleeves. So what I'll do next now will be to place the right part of the sleeve facing the right part, or I'll just place the wrong part facing the wrong part. So what you just need is opposite parts should just face each other, like the right of the right sleeve facing the right of the left sleeve, or the wrong part of the left sleeve facing the wrong part of the right sleeve. So after doing that, you just make sure both are in exact the same position, because you don't want the notch of one sleeve to be different from the other. So I'll take 3.5 inches mark, and luckily for me, a line actually corresponds with that 3.5 inches mark. So from that line, I'll take my 4.5 inches mark also, and I'll be making my notch. So what I'll just do now is I'll make use of my scissors to cut up until the 4.5 inches point. Then I'll make 2 diagonal notches to the right and also to the left. And those 2 diagonal notches will not be more than 1/4 inch. Those diagonal notches will actually make it easier for me when I'm actually facing the arrowhead. So that will be what will make the fixing of the arrowhead go smoothly. So as you can see, we are actually done with the preparation of our sleeve. So the next thing I'll be showing you now will be how to cut our wristband, how to prepare the wristband, how to cut the arrowhead, how to prepare the arrowhead, and how to fix the arrowhead and the wristband to this sleeve. So one is the right and the other is the left, and I'll be showing you exactly how to do all that. So let's go to the next stage. The next stage is the cutting of the wristband. So for our wristband is actually 10 by 3 inches high. So I'll take a straight line like that to start with. Then I'll make use of my right angle triangle to draw a line. If you don't have, you can just make a straight line. Then I'll take 10 inches, I'll make a mark. Also use my right angle triangle to draw a line to the 10 inches mark. What this means is, if I take 3 inches on one side and I take 3 inches on the other side, the distance between both will still be 10 inches. That is where the perpendicularity comes into play. But if you don't have your right angle triangle, you can just make your straight lines like that. And I've succeeded in creating my wristband. So I'll be using this to cut out my interface. Before then, I'll also be creating my arrowhead. I'll make a straight line. Then I'll take 3/4 inches mark on 2 positions, and I'll join with a straight line. Make use of my perpendicularity to create that line on the down line, and also get my height of my arrowhead, which is 6.5 inches. But before I get the exact arrowhead, I'll have to cut off the wristband and also for the arrowhead. So the first thing I'll do will be to cut off the wristband exactly the way I drew I drew it out on the pattern paper. So I'll also be cutting the rectangle I created for the arrowhead. I've not really gotten the arrowhead shape. It is after I finish cutting I'll get the arrowhead shape and I'll be showing you. To get our arrowhead shape, after cutting, I'll fold the rectangular shape into two. Then I'll make a notch from the half-inch mark to the center point upwards, and that will give us the arrowhead shape. So I cut out two wristbands so you could see both. I also cut out two for the arrowhead. The interface I actually used is what we call a hard gum stay over here in Nigeria. I don't know what they call yours over there, but just make sure the interface you are using is hard. So that is the wrong face. You can see me chalking it out. So I placed the wristband on the fabric and I gave as much as 1.5 inches gap before I placed the other one. Now for everything I'm doing, you will see that there is actually a half-inch space at least all through. While cutting, I'll make sure I give a half-inch gap. So I'll cut all through all the sides, giving a half-inch gap. Then I'll also divide the 1.5 inch gap I gave in between both wristband into two. And on dividing both, that would mean I'll be getting a 1/4 inch on both sides. And that 3/4 inch rather will actually be the downline for both wristbands. So I will fold, press, and stitch by a half-inch gap. We've gummed, bent, and also made a half-inch stitch on the downline. So that's the result there. So to get our wristband, we'll also create something like this called the back piece. Only this back piece will not be attaching anything to it. We would also fold by a half-inch on the downline of the back piece. So this is exactly what we're talking about. So to get our wristband, we'll place the front part on the back piece like that, right side facing right side. Then we allow the back piece to be a 1/4 inch higher than that. Then we make a stitch on the side, on the edge of the added interface all through. And you do that for both wristbands. For the arrowhead, it is really straightforward. What you just do is you set your fabric, make sure it is the wrong face you are attaching your interface on. So you place the arrowhead, making sure it is half-inch away from the edge. That half-inch is vital when you are folding. So you can either place the other arrowhead to face it like that, or you can make sure both are actually facing the opposite direction, and you make sure the half-inch gap is also considered. So you can make both face the opposite direction like that, also considering the half-inch gap. So it just depends on how you want to work. But the most important thing, both arrowheads must not face the same direction. After that, you make use of a pressing iron to hold it down. After holding it down with our pressing iron, we'll go straight to the cutting process. So we'll cut every other part of this fabric by half-inch, leaving only the left hand part by 1.5 inches gap. So as you can see, I left a 1.5 inches gap on the left side. Every other part has an excess of ½ inch. And after cutting, I'll divide. So after dividing, I'll go straight to the bending process. Now on bending, I will bend every other part that has an excess of half inch, leaving only the part that has excess of 1.5 inches gap. I'm almost done with the bending process of both arrowheads. So I'm just gonna tell you what we're gonna do next. So after bending, I'm gonna trim the 1.5 inch excess gap I gave up until 1/4 inch before the line. So I only give 1.5 inch excess just so that I can have excess to trim off when I'm trimming off, and just to be sure I don't make it smaller than it should be. Now the arrowhead is a bit technical. That arrowhead part, you just have to bend both diagonal parts and make sure one is not protruding out on the other side. So I'll just use my pressing iron to make sure I arrange it like that. And after that, you will see the position of both. So both will actually be facing each other. Then I'll trim. I'll trim to 1/4 inch before the line. So I'll do that for one arrowhead, and I'll also do that for the other arrowhead. So you could see my arrowhead are not actually facing the same direction. They are both opposite each other. So when I place both arrowheads on the same direction, you will see that they are opposite each other. So the excess, the 1.5 inches excess trim is actually facing each other. What this actually means is one arrowhead can only work for one part of the sleeve. It's either the arrowhead is working for the left sleeve or for the right sleeve. One can actually work for both. That is the wrong face of the sleeve, and I'll turn it to the right face of the sleeve. For the 1.5 inches piece we'll be attaching, I'll chalk out the wrong face, and that will also be vital in the sewing process. So to start the sewing, I'll place the right face underneath the wrong face of the sleeve like that. So I place the right face of the 1.5 inch piece underneath the wrong face. Then I will make a 1/2 inch stitch up onto the diagonal notch point like that. After making our 1/2 inch stitch, you could see the stitch. What we'll do next now will be to bend the remaining part of the 1.5 inches piece outwards like that. Then fold it in a way that it would cover the 1/2 inch stitch. So you fold it twice, fold it once, then you fold it twice to cover the 1/2 inch stitch. And after doing that, you sew on the edge from the top to the diagonal notch point like that. That's the stitching on the edge. So it held it down, and we also trimmed the excesses on that line like that. So after that, we'll go straight to the fixing of the arrowhead. So the arrowhead is facing the part you want to fix it to, and that is the only sleeve it can work for. This is the left sleeve. It can't work for the right sleeve. So this arrowhead will work for only this left sleeve. You can see the way I place both pieces together. I'll just make a half-inch stitch from the top to the diagonal point downward, that diagonal notch downwards. Then after that, I'll turn it outwards. You can see the stitch, the half-inch stitch. So I'll be turning it outwards now. So I'll just bring it outwards like that, bend it inwards to cover the stitch. It's as simple as that. You can make use of a pressing iron to press, or you can just go ahead and continue working. Most times I don't usually press, I just go ahead. So after turning it outwards, I will show you how to make your stitching. So you turn it outwards, making sure you stretch the material like that, so there will be no folding underneath your sewing. So you make your stitch on the edge to hold it down like that. When you get to the down parts, you have to be a little bit technical. You get to the down part, follow the arrowhead direction like that. So you follow that arrowhead direction like that. So when you get to the other part, you pause. Then you will push the other part underneath it like that. So you push the other part underneath it, then you start sewing upwards. And while sewing upwards, you are actually holding both together. So when you get to the point where you feel like you've held both together, you will cross back to the other side and close your stitching. So you just follow it from the top to the down line, follow the arrowhead upwards, then close your stitching. So it's just as simple as that.
Next is to start working on our pocket, and to start with we'll draw a straight line, then we'll draw a perpendicular line to that line, that is a line at right angle to that line. Then we'll start taking our measurements. For our pocket, we'll be working with a 4 by 4.5 inches wide pocket. So I'll be taking my 4 inches all through like that, then I'll be joining all 4 inches points with a straight line. Then from the top, I'll come down by 4.5 inches. But before then, I'll take the center point of that line and I'll use a broken line to indicate the center point. The center point is actually important because there will be slants on both sides of the pocket. So I took my 4.5 inches mark all through and I mark from one point to the other point. Then I will take half inch upwards. I'll take the half inch upwards on both sides. Then I will join to the center point like that. And that will give me that anchor shape on the down line of my. So after getting my pocket, I'll add half inch all through for the sewing allowance. So for my seam allowance, I'll add half inch all through. But at the top of the pocket, I will not add half inch. I'll actually add 1 inch. 1 inch because the folding at the top of the pocket would be different from the folding at the side of the pocket. After creating the pocket, I'll go straight to the creation of the pocket cover. Since we are working on a combat pocket, the pocket cover will be exactly the same size of the pocket. So I'll take 2.5 inches from the line I drew upwards. I'll take parallel points to that line on different positions. Then I will join with a straight line. After joining with a straight line, I'll make a perpendicular line like that. Then I'll take the measurement of my pocket, which is 4 inches wide. Then I'll take the 4 inches measurement on the pocket cover. After taking the 4 inches measurement on the pocket cover, I'll take the half point, which is 2 inches. Then I will join with a broken line. After joining with a broken line, I'll take half inch upwards, just like I did for the down line. I'll do for the pocket cover. Whatever you do for the down line is what you will do for the pocket cover. If you gave 3/4 inches for your slant, you will also give 3/4 inches for the slant of the pocket cover. And just like I did for the pocket, I would also be adding 1 inch at the top of the pocket cover, because at the top of the pocket cover it will also be bended inwards when we are actually joining to the pocket. For the pocket cover, I'll make use of the pattern paper to cut out 2 pieces. Both pieces will be for one pocket. I'll use my chalk to mark out the wrong face. Then I'll place the right face facing the other right face, after which I will make a half-inch stitch from the top through the down line up onto the top again. After sewing both on the wrong face, we'll turn it out to the right face, using any sharp object we can to protrude the sharp edges out. Then after which we would use our pressing iron to straighten it. When straightening it, you'll make sure you use your hands to open it up. And after doing that, we'll bend at the 1 inch mark.
Immediately we are done preparing the collar, we'll go straight to the fixing of the collar, and we'll take 10 1/4 inch from the shoulder line like that. Then that 10 1/4 inches point, we'll take 2 inches also from the buttonhole line. So on that buttonhole line, we took 10 1/4 inches, then 2 inches from the buttonhole line. So 10 1/4 vertically, then 2 inches horizontally. So at that point, we'll place our pocket. So that is for the left side. For the right side, we'll do exactly the same. So 10 1/4 on the buttonhole line, 2 inches from the buttonhole line, then we'll place our second pocket. What we are just trying to do is to make sure the pocket is of exactly the same distance from the buttonhole line. That's from the buttonhole line to the left, then from the buttonhole line to the right. So from both buttonhole positions, that's from both buttonhole opposite positions, the pocket placement is exactly the same. So that's just what we're trying to do. So after that, I'll place my pocket cover. Probably I'll trim it to 1/2 inches just to make sure my stitching is accurate, because my stitching will be 1/2 inch from the line. So I'll place it like that. Then I'll make my stitching on that folding line. Then after I make my stitching on that folding line, I'll also make my stitching on the pocket itself. Now on the pocket itself, I'll be making double stitches. That would mean I'll first of all make my stitching on the edge, then make another stitching 1/2 inch away from it. After which I'll place the pocket cover on top of the pocket like that and stitch the edge. So I'll do the same for the other pocket. I'll stitch the edge of the pocket. Then I'll also make another stitch to make it double. Then I'll trim off the folding, which I actually folded initially by 1 inch. And the main reason I'm actually trimming this folding to 1/2 inch is because of the position. The position of the pocket must not be too high. Like when I'm placing the pocket cover, if I leave the 1 inch, it will make it too high. So reducing it to 1/2 inch will actually make it a little bit downwards. So it's not up to my neck. So I'll stitch the top like I said on the former one. After stitching it inside, I'll also stitch the top to hold it down. You can make it double stitching after doing that. You can see what we got after fixing the pocket. So both the pocket and the pocket cover is perfectly joined, and everything has double stitches on it. And that's that for that. To get our neck measurement, we'll leave the buttonhole closed. We'll start the measurement from one point, round all through the neck back to that point, and see if we'll get our neck measurement. If not, we'd have to increase or reduce it. That's that. Now, to get the measurement of our collar, we would have to open the buttonhole space, then take the full measurement from one beginning to the other end. That's we are taking the whole full neck measurement after the buttonhole line is opened. So, and that will be what we'll be using for our collar. Just to be sure, we'll actually take it again. So we'll start from the part that will contain the buttonhole, go round up until the part that will contain the button. So you can see we got around 19 inches. For our collar, we'll start with the pattern drafting. After the pattern drafting, we'll cut it out. Use it to cut out our interface, then use it to sew on the fabric. So I made a straight line, then I made another perpendicular straight line to that straight line. The measurement we are working with is 19, which is the full measurement of the neckline. So I divided into 2 and I made a mark. And on that mark, I took 1 inch upwards. And I will join all successive 1 inch points with a straight line. Or should I say a broken line instead. And after doing that, I'll mark the initial point. Then I'll take half of the whole measurement by bending my tape rule into 2. Then I'll mark, and that will be the center point. Then on that initial point, I'll take 1 inch upwards. And after taking 1 inch upwards, on the center point, I'll make a curve to the 1 inch upward point I took. Then on the down part, I would also make a parallel curve to that curve to meet that point like that. Then I'll take the measurement I took for the neckline, that's the half measurement I took for the neckline. I would also take the same measurement upwards, that's the 19 divided by 2. After doing that, I'll go back by 1 inch. Then on that 1 inch point, I'll make a curve to the down line, and that will be the final piece of the puzzle for the creation of the down part of the collar. So the down part of the collar is created. I'll just use my curve to chalk it out. After chalking it out, I'll go straight to the creation of the upper part of the collar. The collar is actually a two-piece collar. So this is the down piece. So on the 1 inch point I took backwards, I'll take a straight line upwards. Then I'll make a measurement, but before then I'll draw a straight line on the down line. Then I'll take a measurement of 2.5 inches, and I would also take 2.5 inches on the other side. Then I'll join with a broken line. I'm actually joining with a broken line because that is not the final line. Then I'll go backwards by a half inch, make a straight line like that, come downwards by a half inch, make a point, and from that point I will join to the new point either by using a ruler or by using a curve. So I made a half inch stitch on the down one like that to hold the folding, so the folding doesn't actually pull off. So I also made a back piece for the lower part of the down collar. So that's the back piece of the down part of the collar. It's almost exactly the same size. Now for the upper part of the collar, this is the interface we actually cut out, and we'll be attaching it to the fabric. To finalize the making of the upper part of the pocket, so you place the back piece, you place the front piece on the back, right face facing the right face. Then you make a 1/2 inch stitch on the edge of the interface from the down line upwards all through up onto the down line of the other part. Preparing the upper part of the collar, we'll notch the center part on the down line. Then we'll also notch the center part of the down part of the collar. Then we'll place both side by side. If you have a pin, you can use it to hold it down, or you can just make a stitch on the edge of the fabric to hold it down, not the edge of the interface. After sewing it on the edge and holding it down with that stitch, I'll be adding the back piece of the down part of the collar, and that will be the final piece of the puzzle. So I'll place the back piece exactly the same position the down part of the collar was held to the upper part. Then after placing it, I'll make sure I make a stitch on the edge of the interface this time, from the down part all through like that to the end of the other down part. And after doing that, I would have succeeded in creating our collar. To fix our collar, the process is pretty simple. It's just a process of making your collar and inserting your neckline half inch inside your collar. So this is our collar we finished making. So what we are just going to do is insert the neckline half inch inwards like that from one beginning to the other end. But before we join the sleeve to the bodice, we have to reduce the armhole of the front part. That's the part that will join to the front part of the chest. So you can see the way I'm reducing it. I'm cutting it from the edge of the downline to the edge of the top. What this actually means is after reducing, the edge will still be the same with the former positions. Just the inner parts will differ. So after reducing, I will spread it the right face facing the right face, using the reduced part of one sleeve to reduce the other part of the other sleeve. That's the front part of the, let's say the left sleeve that was reduced will be used to reduce the front part of the right sleeve. So you can see what I'm doing there. I'll just cut. And on doing this, I've succeeded in reducing the possible foldings that usually exist on the chest part of your shirt. So the front part of your chest usually have this folding, especially when you are not busty or if you are a man, you don't have big chest. So you usually have this folding on the front chest part. So if you don't want such to occur, you just reduce the front part like that, and it always works perfectly. You can see the reduced part. So that's the reduced part of the right sleeve, and that's the reduced part of the front of the left sleeve. So I'll be showing you how to attach your sleeve to your bodice. It is quite different from the way you attach your short sleeve to your bodice, especially when you are working with shirts that have double stitches all around, folded stitches. What I mean by folded stitches is sometimes you stitch, then you turn and fold and stitch on the folded part. And this is a typical example of those kinds of shirts. So the right part of the sleeve will face the right part of the bodice, and the left part of the sleeve would face the left part of the bodice. You have to understand the arrangement on how these things work. So you could see the way I position both. So that is the part that will go to the right. You cannot interchange it. So for us to start sewing, you have to know the beginning, or should I say the center point, and that is that gator line on the shoulder meeting that gator line on the sleeve. So if possible, you can make use of your scissors to notch both points, and both points will actually be the intersecting point when you are joining. So if you are not sure on how to start, you can just use a pin to hold both points together and start your stitching from that center point forward. Come back to that center point and also sew backwards. But the joining process is a bit technical, and I will show you how. To join, you just place the bodice of the shirt to be ½ inch lesser than the position of the sleeve all through. So you place the bodice of the shirt to be ½ inch less than the position of the sleeve. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. So you open it up like that, and also open the shirt up like that. Then at the center point, which will be the beginning point, you will place the shirt wrong face facing the wrong face, making sure it is ½ inch away from the edge of the sleeve. There is a ½ inch distance. Then you start sewing the distance away from the edge of the shirt. Now you will sew from the down line up until the center point, then from the center point to the other down line. You do exactly the same for the other sleeve. On joining the sleeve to the borders, you could see that one part is longer than the other part, and you could clearly see the stitch used in joining both. And that will be the first of the two stitches that will be present at the end of the sewing process. So after joining, what we'll do now is we'll open it up like that. Then we'll use the longer part to cover up the shorter part. After covering up, we'll sew on the edge of the folding. And you will do that from the beginning of one armhole all through to the end of the other position of the armhole. And you do the same for the joining of the left sleeve too. We are done with the stitching, and I'll bring the camera up close for you to see what we got. You can see how straight it was. So you can also do yours to be even more perfect than this. You just have to be careful and patient while sewing. So you could see the way the sleeve was attached to the bodice. So everything is just the way it should be, and the double stitching on the edge of this sleeve, you could see that, and I totally explained how I got that. So to join the side of the shirt, need to rearrange the position of the edges of the side, so the front part will be ½ inch shorter than the back part. Then I will sew a ½ inch away from the ½ inch position of the front part, and I will sew from the wrist up onto armhole point, and from the armhole point up until the downline. And after doing this for the right side of the shirt, I would also do this for the left side of the shirt. And to do this for the left side of the shirt, I would have to turn the shirt on the side, because one part will now automatically be longer than the other part as a result of what we did on the right side. So the shorter part will just arrange itself by itself. So there's no need for arrangement. One will be automatically shorter. So you make a ½ inch away from the shorter part which you're stitching from the down line up onto the armhole, then up until the wrist. Then after that, we'll do our turning and sewing. The turning process will actually be what will make it the double stitch. So you could see what we got after stitching it for the first time. So that is what we got. So we'll go straight to the turning process, but before that, let me show you exactly how it looks like. So you could see one part is shorter than the other part, and you could see the stitch away, the ½ inch stitch away from the shorter part. And I did that for both sides, for the left and also for the right side. The stitch will be visible. Now when you do the turning, it will now make it a double stitch. So for us to do our turning, the first thing we have to do is to open up the buttonhole line. So we would actually open up the buttonhole line, which I use tiny little stitches to hold. So I'll just open up the buttonhole line, then I'll be able to start the turning process. Now after opening up the buttonhole line, I will fold the longer part to cover the shorter part by ½ inch. Then I'll make a stitch on the edge of the folding. I will do that from the down line up until the armhole point, then up until the wrist point of the sleeve. I will do this for the left side and also for the right side. We are done with the side stitching. So we've automatically created the double stitch on the side, and we did all this using a single needle machine. Unlike the double stitching you see in most of your ready-made shirts, they're actually made with double stitching machines. So we'll go straight to the fixing of the wrist. You could see the right face. The right face is the part containing the interface. So we'll start by the under part of the arrowhead. You place it by ½ inch inwards inside the wrist band. So you just place the edge like that inside the wristband by ½ inch, and you sew up until like 1 inch before the gator line, that gator line of the sleeve. You pause. So when you get to that point, you would place the other end to the edge of the wristband. Then the remainder would be what you fold. So the remainder will be what you will fold on the gator line. So what I'm just trying to say is you will place one end like that, then you will sew up until like 1 inch before the gator line. You pause, then you place the other end on the edge inside the wristband on the other side. You can use a pin to hold it down, or you use tiny stitches to hold it down. Then the remaining excess would be what you will fold on the gator line. And after doing that, you'll make your 1/2 inch stitch on the wristband all through.
Let's do a quick review of what we have done so far before we continue.
Since we are done fixing the wrist, we'll go straight to the buttonhole making process. And we'll take 1/2 inch from the down part of the collar like that and make a horizontal line. And from that horizontal line, we'll take 2.5 inches downwards and we'll make a 3/4 inches line. All our buttonhole will be 3/4 inches high. So from the down part of the 3/4 inches mark, we'll begin the measurement of the next buttonhole position. So we'll take the next buttonhole position, which is 3 inches from that. Mostly I usually use 2.5, 2, 3/4. It just depends on how closely you want your buttons to be. For this shirt, I don't really want my buttons to be too close to each other. I want them a little bit far apart. So that's why I'm using 3 inches. Normally 2.5 inches is the standard. So for each buttonhole position, I'll take 3 inches away from the former buttonhole position, and I'll be making my buttonholes on those lines you see me creating. After which I'll fix corresponding buttons to. From the buttonhole, I'll go straight to the downline. For the downline, we already made our curve when we were cutting the borders of the shirt on our pattern paper. So the only thing we'll just be doing here will just be to trim off any excesses, making sure one part is exactly the same size with the other part. So I'll just place both folded side by side facing each other. Then I will trim off any part that seems to be in excess of the other part, just trying to make sure both are of the same, or should I say exact shape. In process, I'll start from the edge, folding twice. So I'll fold twice, 1/2 inch. So I will fold the 1/2 inch twice, sewing on the edge of the folding, following the curve. So you don't have to force anything. All you just need to do is follow the curve. The way you use your hands will determine how good your curve will be. So what you do is, you could see my left hand actually holding it down, then my right hand doing the folding. So whatever I fold, my left hand will hold it down. Then for my new foldings, my right hand will do the business. And I will do that from the edge of that folding to the other edge. The process actually requires precision. You have to be perfect when doing it. You just need to be patient as well. So you just keep folding and you keep sewing on the edge to hold it down. Actually, there's something I want to explain, and that would be on the wristband. So that's just that for the downline. So I'll go straight to the wristband and explain something. Sometimes your arrowhead do have buttons, but this arrowhead will not be having any buttons. So the wristband is 3 inches high. So half of it would be the position where I will fix my button and also make my buttonhole. Now on the arrowhead part, you could see the opening is really small. so there will be no need to create a buttonhole and fix button there. If the sewing were to be something like this, where the stitching is down that small and the opening is big, probably we would have fixed a buttonhole and button there. But for this will only have button on the wristband.